to the Yibum. Okay, Daf Chofei, I'm just going to continue to the end, and we'll break it up by the editing. We'll just break it up. Kotan van Pilya. However, if the Yavam was a minor or the Yavam performed chalitza while he was wearing a soft shoe, psulis ve'im paistan, it's possible they don't disqualify her from entering into Yibum. Zaidi Amar Zaidi says kulan in paistan. In all cases, it's not possible. Chutz menachin, except for the last case where the husband instructed the sefer to write a get of divorce for one of his wives and explain that he would later decide which wife to divorce. Was the Rabbi when you have brothers who divide their property, they received as a Yerusha, are considered purchasers from each other, and they have to return the portions to each other from Yevel. So when you see, in this case, so what do you see from here? That when they divided the land, this is not viewed as Breira, clarified, who inherited which portion from their father. And it's necessary for Rabbi to state that there's no Breira retroactively both in the case of Yerusha and in the case of Gittin. If it only teach me this case, I would say Dafka in the Gittin Rabbi holds there's no Breira, it shouldn't be in law. Lishma, in the case of Mecher, I said the Mechir has to be done, has to be returned by Yevel. But Yerusha Matan I would say Yerusha Matan you don't have to. And if you would teach me only Sada, I would say it's only Mechumra. So therefore, I need both cases. If the scribe says, if a husband says to the sefer, write a get of divorce for whichever of my wives come out from the entrance first, what's the halacha? So I'm related to Nisu, we learned, if you tell the lavlover, that you write a get, and whichever one of you I want to divorce, I will divorce a garish. So then it's possible to garish, but you can't. What do we see from here by Gittin? Ain breda. There's no breda. Ace face. That's another shayla. Hayim the banav. If you tell your kids, Harini sheikhet as a pesach amishi yalam mikem rishon l'dishin Yerushalayim. I'm going to shech the korban pesach to anybody who comes up first. In other words, you're going to be part of my korban pesach. Whoever comes up first to Yerushalayim. So the din is so it says the din is that once the majority of his body goes into Yerushalayim, he's acquired his portion and acquires the portion of his brothers together with him. What do we see from here? That there is Breira, as it becomes clear retroactively that the father shechted the Pesach on behalf of his son. So I do see the idea of Breira. So he says, Aisha B'ri, my son, what's the connection between Psachim and Gittin? As we know, the din is by Korban Pesach, you have to be listed on beforehand. So if you want to say that everybody was listed on beforehand, so it makes sense that he's just doing it to be Mizar. If you're going to say that they were not listed on before, they can't go ahead and actually be listed after the shechita, that the children have to be already registered before the father says his statement. So it must be that they were all registered. And the only reason why he made such a tanai is in order to get them excited and get them going. We learned as well. There's a Maisa the daughters came before the sons. It came out that the daughters were like enthusiastic and the sons were like very lazy. Okay, Abaya says, Rabbi Yehuda's original answer to Rabbi Yehuda, so he says this, Abai says, that he asks him about a case where one makes a clarification dependent on the decision of others, and yet he resolves it based on the case where the husband makes the clarification dependent on his own decision. And then Rav Isha raised the shaila to him based on the Mishnah concerning a korban pesach, where one makes the clarification dependent on the decision of others. So Amar Rava says, "My kusha, what's the shaila? Dilma, perhaps man de isle breda leishna tele b'das atzma v'leishna tele b'das acherim. Maybe the one who accepts the principle of Breira, there's no difference if one makes it dependent on his own decision, and there's no difference if he makes it dependent on the decision of others. And the one who does not hold the Breira, it doesn't make a difference if it's Tela on himself or others, there's no din of Breira. We know that Rabbi Yehuda, who is Tela b'das atzmai, unless the breda, there is a difference between the two. In other words, it doesn't go hand in hand. So the Gemara says, explains, one makes it dependent on his own decision. Rabbi Yehuda does not accept the principle of breda. The Tanya, if somebody buys wine from Goyim and Omer, and he says, the two lugim that I will separate in the future for Truma, harein Truma it's Truma. And as well, Asora Ma'aserishin, 10 loig are Ma'aserishin, Tisha Ma'asersheni. So the din is that Umechal, he's Mechal the Ma'asersheni on the house of his, on the mois in his house. And now, so do we see that Rabbi Yehuda, there's no breda when one makes the clarification dependent on his own decision. Now, where do we see a case of when he's Taylor B'das Acherim, there is breda? It says that in the case where a husband is sick and he says to his wife, this is your get from now if I die due to this illness. Now, if he dies, the get takes effect from the time of the statement. The Mishnah asks, Ma hi ba'isayomim. What is the halachic status of the wife in those days between the get was given but before the husband died? So Rabbi Yehuda says, she's a married woman for everything. When she dies, she's a get. So since Rabbi Yehuda agrees that the get takes effect retroactively, it cannot take effect after the death of the husband. He holds that there is breda where one makes the clarification dependent on the decision of others. Now, Amar Lei the Mishash L'Rava, the Mishash says to Rava, Hareb Shimon. But isn't there a Shimon who holds Taylor B'das Atzmei Les Breda, that when the outcome depends on his own decisions, then there's no breda. But Taylor B'das Acherim is no breda. So the Gemara elaborates, Taylor B'das Atzmei Les Breda, when one makes the outcome dependent on his own decisions, there's no breda. Hadamar Taylor B'das Acherim is the breda. Tanya Arini Boyalech Almanash Yirtzaba. Where do we see that when you Taylor B'das Acherim there is breda? If a guy says to a woman, I'm having relations with you for the purpose of Kiddushin, if your father wants, so then the din is Afal Pi Shalei Ratza'av, even if, so like this, he says, I'm having relationships with you for the purpose of Kiddushin, on condition that my father will desire our Kiddushin. And then married her without the Tanai, that even if the father does not desire, she is nevertheless Mekudeshes through the Biyah. Shimon ben Yehuda Imam Shimon Ratza'av Mekudeshes. No, if the father wants, it's Mekudeshes. Le Ratza'av ain't Mekudeshes. But if the father does not want, it's not Mekudeshes. Now, what do we see from here? That according to Rav Shimon, there is brera when one makes the outcome dependent on the decision of others. As in this case, whether or not the Kiddushin takes effect is dependent on the desire of the father. So Amar Lei, so Rava said to the Misharsha, Ben Rabbi Yehuda, Ben Rabbi Shimon, whether, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon, doesn't matter that in both cases there is breda. Why? Because somebody says this. There, in the Mishnah about somebody who purchases wine from the Kutim, they do not answer him from relying on the separation that he will later perform because they don't accept breda, but rather, another thing is, the Kameir says, don't you concede that perhaps the wineskin will burst before he manages to separate the truma? And then what's going to happen is, you can't say breda because there's nothing left over there. And then it comes out that retroactively he's drinking tevel. So that's why it doesn't work. So Amar Lahem, so the mayor said to them, when it actually bursts, there will be a concern. Now, from the question that they addressed for mayor, it's clear that they would accept the principle of brera in this case.